All right, now we're good.
So Jonathan, without Chief Cox, without anybody here taking the minutes, would you just begin with the roll call for?
Absolutely. Director Stockman,
Present.
Director Sherrill,
Present.
Chief Armstrong, sorry, Nate.
Present.
And Captain Seeley.
Present.
Excellent. And that's complete for roll call, and just opening up for any public comment. And there are no hands raised, Director Stockman.
Then I'd like to just begin with our normal Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, at this point, Chief Cox, may we begin with just a review of the districts and the board's vegetation plan, and then we'll move on to the presentation. It seems like the logical place to begin.
Absolutely. So I'm just pulling up right now the Vegetation Management Committee's action plan. This was obviously recently amended at the October board meeting to include the expansion of the vegetation weed abatement program that expanded into the vegetation abatement program, specifically in those zone 1 lots that were identified. Just kind of as we do on all of these meetings, go through where we're at. Everybody in the district over the last 6 weeks should have received their mailer, their informational mailer with all of the information regarding the Ready, Set, Go, as well as evacuation information and preparing for wildfire. That was sent out, I believe, to 12,000 locations within the district, and a similar number within the unincorporated area for San Mateo County Fire. For September, you probably, if you've driven by Station 41, have seen that the fire danger rating sign is now installed. That sign is now updated by the crews at Station 41. And when we have high fire danger days, they have the ability to actually put in languaging that says red flag warning at a kind of highly trafficked location. As far as the implementation of the flammable vegetation priority 1 list, you'll recall at the last meeting, those 15 lots that were identified have been noticed, and the weed abatement contractor notice to bids went out earlier this month and close on Monday. So we anticipate at the December 15th meeting having the contractor chosen to actually perform the abatement work on those 15 lots. You'll remember that at the last board meeting, we also started to look at what does the additional fire prevention, fire marshal staffing model look like. We have obviously had conversations with a number of folks around this, and we'll bring that back in a more kind of defined mechanism in the December 15th meeting to meet the needs of this action plan. And then what we have on the docket for January is something that is timely for today's discussion. Is the committee had obviously looked to do a district-wide wildfire assessment based on the data that's already out there with the fire hazard severity zones and whatnot. And this conversation on the next agenda topic kind of talks a little bit about a micro piece of that within the district in El Granada that specifically is looking at some specific tasks in that location. That's where we're at right now. Looking into next year, obviously we have some expansion of the vegetation management program. Just remembering that next year's priority 2 list, above and beyond the seasonal weed abatement program, that's about 300 lots. We have about another 30 lots that are going to be in the vegetation abatement program for brush that were identified by the district. With that, I would also like to kind of pass it over to Austin, because I know Austin, this is your world every day, and I just wanted to see if there's anything that that was noteworthy, and if you had any feedback from the community regarding the notices of abatement.
Yeah, so we've started to get, in the fire marshal's office, we started to get emails and phone calls from various people that received the letters for the priority 1 list. The vast majority of them are, can you recommend somebody local because I live in a different state? So that's kind of the demographic we're working with, which just kind of keys us into why these lots have been unmanaged for quite some time. A lot of the property owners are either elderly, so they're having their children take over, their adult children take over, or they're living out of state. So they're pretty lost as far as comes to California regulations and everything else, especially specific to coast side. So we're kind of schooling and like corralling them down in a certain direction, try and get the work done on the private end, as well as once that really starts kicking off, we are going to be revisiting the annual weed abatement program list and auditing that. There's going to be a serious amount of work put into auditing that. We've had an immense amount of home development and private land building. So we need to go through and audit that to make sure that we're not doubling down on weed abatement lots that have already been built up with homes on them. So that's kind of our next project while we're waiting for the timelines for the extended vegetation management project to keep going, just so we can always keep something moving forward in the realm of the wildfire arena. So it's been pretty busy. Things are kind of coming to a head, obviously, with the final inspection of the priority 1 lots coming next month, so that we can get some clarification on actually taking care of mitigation efforts. But in the meantime, it's just a lot of public outreach and explaining exactly what is required for each lot. I thought that our letter was pretty succinct in the different bullet points, but it's amazing the different interpretations that we're running into. So it's kind of food for thought for the next priority 2 list, modifying that letter, making sure that some clarity is reached between the fire marshal's office and the actual property owner. But as far as that, everything's moving as planned, and it's just a waiting game to make sure that the property owners have enough time to take care of it on their end before we step in with the department hired contractors, essentially.
Great, thank you, Austin. And with that, happy to answer any questions from the directors regarding the action plan.
No, that's exactly our understanding. We have moved forward with the $200,000 allocation for the 15 highest priority lots. You have conducted a needs assessment and cost benefit analysis for hiring an additional fire protection fire marshal staff member, and that action is before the board. You are working on that district-wide fire assessment, or we have discussed the need that while we are looking at immediate actions to be taken with regard to vegetation mitigation, we also want to approach this problem from the top down. And we had discussed a wildfire assessment for wildfire behavior throughout our entire district, our entire coastside fire protection district. And that's going to probably be impacted by the outcome of this meeting. And we have allocated $400,000 for the abatement at 37 additional lots within this budget year. So these are all actions that we have taken, are taking, and which will be finalized soon. And again, I thank you. I thank the staff for the excellent support, the excellent briefs that you have written, the boots on the ground, the hours in the neighborhood, all the things that you have done to really come up with a complete top-down, bottom-up approach to wildfire management on the coast side. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. I share Cynthia's views, all of those, and specifically to the wildfire assessment that we've discussed and we're in position to begin. I share the concerns about how this will overlap with a separate, just El Granada assessment, and now at this point, while it's already in progress, what's the best way to move forward? I'm glad we're at least in this beginning phase and be included in this process so we can figure out if there's a way to combine the purpose of those two reports so they don't duplicate or cause conflict, and that they really serve the entire coastside district's needs. So, but maybe I'm looking forward to the report this morning, and then we'll go from that point with any further questions. But that's all I had on the current action plan. Thank you.
Great. Sheena, I don't know if you need to share anything. I can stop my screen share or Kellex.
I'm going to share something. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You got to give me a minute because this is now.
Sure. Are we moving into that item now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, before we do it, I have to say, even though we're here to talk about that particular project, I'm really excited to see your list. And actually, I'm seeing a number of ways we might be able to support you more broadly.
Right.
And so we can talk a little bit about that. But we're involved in a lot of efforts on lands where there are non-resident landowners, a lot of outreach and support for myriad natural resource management things, including vegetation management. So, we can talk more in the future and see if there's ways that we can support what sounds like a really comprehensive approach that you're taking.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And with that, it's concerning that we haven't, that information wasn't to you, or it wasn't common knowledge that it was out there, and maybe you can help us at the end, or help me specifically as a director understand where those within the district, and especially the board, where we're not communicating those issues to our community, where there's any blank spots of the planning that we're doing, because we're all sitting here together with a shared vision of what we want to accomplish and the need for it. But these are the places where we can fill the holes of where the communication is, where between agencies information is not getting crossed, whether it's an issue of not attending each other's meetings, whether it's staff not communicating to other staffs. So I'm glad for your excitement. I'm glad that you recognize the work that's being done and have questions about it. And with that, I just put that out early. So,
Sure.
Not only do we learn more about what this proposal and this project's going to be, but how we get past this to make these agencies work better. And more importantly, that we're communicating to our community that they're always, every day, have an understanding of what we're doing and how it's a benefit to them. So
Absolutely.
with that, thank you for that.
Yeah, sure. And I think part of that, just to sort of answer that up front, I think part of it is that for us, while we've done vegetation management for decades, it's largely been through a lens of habitat enhancement.
Mm-hmm.
Our forays into really being explicit about vegetation management for fuel load reduction are much newer, and we're on a steep learning curve. So we've been, we learn a lot from Jonathan, from Rich, from Austin, who are here. Nate, you and I haven't met before. And so, Jonathan is constantly putting this in front of us. You need to talk to these folks. You need to talk to these folks. You need to talk to these folks. And we're just kind of figuring out more and more who the different entities are and how they work together. And so I think this is just part of our learning curve.
Okay, great.
So I'm very happy to hear that, because it was concerning. All of our information is on our website, coastsidefire.org, all of our meeting minutes, all of our reports. We're, of course, a public agency. Our information is available in advance of our meetings, our agendas, everything, the staff reports, all there. So we were surprised, in that our responsibility is to create policy and to allocate funding.
Mm-hmm.
To not have been a part of the original group that is mentioned in the RFP for this project.
Yeah, I can only imagine your surprise. Well, we've been working with Austin, but I think one of the things that was newer for us is understanding every group that we work with, and I'll make our presentation in a moment that's about the RCD, but we work with hundreds of partners, and they all have very different cultures. And some of them, the boards don't get involved at all, the staff does. And some have no staff, it's just the boards. And so a lot of it is figuring out the culture of this organization. So Sheena's worked with Austin on, the chipping program and the RFP that went out and that sort of thing. And now what we're learning is the involvement that the board would like to have. And that's something that Jonathan really brought to our attention. He's like, no, you need to come to this group. And so we wanted to respond to that. And then with the specifics, well, why don't I present a little bit about the RCD and this project and a little bit about how it came about, and then what we'll do moving forward. So let's see. Hold on one second. Let me close a couple windows to make sure I open the right window here. Okay, so a little bit about the RCD. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
So my best guess is you don't know much about the Resource Conservation District, and it's the same thing. We have publicly noticed meetings. We also do outreach to the community, and we always wonder why people don't know what we're doing as well. And so like you, we're a special district. We've been around since 1939, and we're always wondering why people don't know what we're doing, why it's a surprise to them. So I have a lot of empathy for what you're bringing up. So basically, if I could simplify our mission, it's to help people help the land. And we've been based out of Half Moon Bay since 1939. Our district boundaries are essentially the western half of the county, from San Francisco line to Santa Cruz County line. But we're enabled in our originating legislation to work outside of our boundaries as well. So we have a number of county-wide initiatives and some that go across counties. And so one of the key things about resource conservation districts, there's about 100 in California. In San Mateo County, we were the first in the state, which again, is why we're always like, why don't people know we're here? And there's thousands across the nation, and it's often a surprise to people that we're here. We provide non-regulatory assistance. All of our work is in partnership. We only work where we are invited, and we have extremely diverse tools for helping people accomplish their natural resource management goals. These are our current focal areas. And one of the things that's interesting about RCDs is that whereas other organizations have a mandate for a particular outcome, like, fire, for example, or, like clean water or what have you, we actually don't have a mandate for any particular type of project or program area or any particular outcome other than responding to our community needs around natural resource management and helping people help the land. So our priorities, our focal areas, our programs, our projects are always identified by the community that we serve as their project. And RCDs were created to evolve with the resource management concerns of the community, of evolving priorities, changing resources, et cetera. So our focal areas right now have to do with water, and that's both water supply, water availability, and water quality. So we're doing a lot of things having to do with water pollution, water quality monitoring, helping farmers build ponds to get them off the creeks and give them water supply reliability. Those ponds can also be used for fire suppression, et cetera, and for habitat. That's mostly in the South Coast. We're doing a lot having to do with climate. That's both climate mitigation, carbon farming, and climate adaptation, helping people with extreme weather. A great deal of our work has to do with restoring habitat for threatened and endangered species. And that's where much of our vegetation management historically has been focused, though not all of it. We were formed by farmers and still provide a lot of technical assistance to farms. We host the county's agricultural ombudsman, for example. And then our newest focal area is the forest health and fire resiliency. We'd worked on forest health for decades, but really almost entirely through a lens of habitat, ecosystem function, attenuating flooding, extreme climate, that sort of thing. The focus on fire is much newer for us. And the way that we do this is very adaptive. So sometimes we're involved in policy, sometimes we're involved in project implementation, sometimes we're involved in outreach and education, sometimes we're involved in project development. Often we just do technical assistance. We did a big study, for example, in Pillar Point Harbor on the sources of bacteria to identify how to reduce bacteria to Pillar Point Harbor, but also on any given day, we're helping maybe a horse operation put in a compost bunker, you know, to get like their manure out of the rain, etc. So very adaptive. We have some policy tools that we've developed in this area to facilitate, for example, getting permit streamlining for large scale vegetation management. So utilizing CAL FIRE's programmatic EIR, their CEQA document. We got a determination with the Coastal Commission to accept a public works plan through the RCD that then essentially exempts those projects from having to get a coastal development permit, for example. And so we're able to integrate very diverse goals and values. So with the environmental work that we're basically, that's our core function. We see that nested in things having to do with public safety, economic security, equity, social justice, et cetera. One of the things that the RCD was created to be able to do is work on private lands. So we often, because we're non-regulatory and because we're invited and work in partnership, we often work on private lands and work across public and private lands frequently. And also, as I mentioned before, we've done a lot on lands that with non-resident landowners, you know, they're in Canada, they're in Texas, what have you. But, you know, back in 1978, they bought some speculative property out on the coast and haven't done anything with it. And then it's been passed off to multiple generations, you know, the scoop. But their management or lack of management of those properties affects their neighbors and their community in myriad ways. So, so we feel you on that, Austin. And we're a neutral party. So we are typically not advocating for a particular outcome, but more about how to help people. So that's a little bit about how we do that. And so these are some projects that are the types of things we've done. One of the things on the left here, you'll see one big storm with steeply incised creeks and erosive soils. This gully opened up in one storm event a couple of years ago. And we worked with the county. This was in the county's right of way and on private land that was an agricultural production. And we worked across these landowners to remediate that gully and fix it within a year. On the right, you can see that is the flooding, that regular flooding that happened in even the smallest of storm events on the road into Pescadero. And so we, I don't know if you're familiar with this project, that we were able to get the funding and the permits to dredge about 8,000 linear feet through Pescadero Marsh that simultaneously restored migration for endangered salmon back up into the watershed and mitigated the flooding to the town of Pescadero. And so it was like kind of a win-win project. So these two are just examples of the kinds of work that we're doing. And so if any of you aren't familiar with these projects, you can see why we're always saying sort of the same thing, where we're like, why don't people know? We have public meetings, we get it in the paper, we send out newsletters, we send out notices. Like, how do we help people know that we're here? And so I'm really appreciating this opportunity to tell you that we're here and look forward to how we might work together. This is an issue that you all are really familiar with. So this in the Princeton by the Sea community, this is a project where we partnered with CAL FIRE years ago, where behind these houses. So here you see the subdivision that's right up against dense eucalyptus. And so this was, I don't know, is Rich still on the line? Is he? Maybe not. Rich, what was this, like 2000? I don't know if you can hear me. I think we did this project 2008, 9, 10.
The one with Post was 2009.
2009 on the post and the school district property, right?
School district was
You went across.
there,
Oh,
and
this,
we did it twice after that.
yeah. So this was So the idea was we were trying to demonstrate for the community what you could do with limited permitting, as opposed to the full, removal of trees. And so it was a relatively small sort of demonstration project where we partnered with CAL FIRE to work across school district property and post property behind these homes. And then the program that we've got now is we help with the chipper program in support of the priorities and the work that the Fire Safe Council is doing. And Denise Ania, who many of you probably know, has mentored us in a lot of this and led a lot of these efforts. Helping currently with the shaded fuel break and hazardous tree removal along the fire roads in Quarry Park. We've got several hundred acres of forest treatment projects moving forward this year in Wonderlick and Huddart County parks, as well as the Girl Scout camp down in Buteno. And as I mentioned before, streamlining permitting, and then providing technical assistance and support to communities for vegetation management, project development. And also a lot of our work down in the CZU area has been in post-fire recovery, which is actually, frankly, very sad and not something that we envisioned we would be doing. But with our history, where we are initially formed as the Soil Conservation District and expanded beyond that, erosive soils and dirt and water. We know dirt, water, and critters, basically. So now a little bit about this, the El Granado Wildfire Scoping Project. So the goals are to develop site-specific understanding of wildfire scenarios, to scope a suite of actions that would most effectively reduce those risks, to then have those be have that list of potential projects and actions be both short and long-term on both private and public lands as appropriate. And we'll have a focus certainly on eucalyptus management. A little bit of the history of that project is that, as I mentioned, we work where we're invited, and a number of people from the Mid-Coast community had been asking us to help. We work extensively with county parks. We do a lot of work with county parks, everything from water quality to stream crossings to rural road repairs to forest management, et cetera. So between the county asking us for assistance and the community asking for assistance, and the community had been, a few folks from the Mid-Coast Community Council in particular, and a few other folks outside the Mid-Coast Community Council had been advocating strongly with the county, as you're probably familiar, for some work to be done. And then the county was going to give a small amount of money to them for some project that they had identified. And we were wondering if the project that they were advocating for, what was that was grounded in. So there's folks in the community who feel very, very strongly about what the priorities should be or what the solutions should be. But we frankly weren't confident that it was rooted in empirical information or the expertise that's out there. And wanted to make sure that the advocacy for projects synchronized with the actual expertise that's out there and is science-based. And so we offered to help bring in a consultant that could scope projects. So as you've undoubtedly seen, that there's been acrimony between some folks in the community and the county around what projects should be done, and it seemed a little stuck. And so one of the things that we offered to do was bring in a more objective science-based process with experts that could identify what the list of projects might be. And it's not dissimilar from the work that we did addressing the flooding in Pescadero, in which for years there were a lot of people who needed to take on a piece of that, but everybody was so busy pointing their finger at who else should do work that nothing moved forward. And so we were hoping to get it to a point where we could say, here's all the projects that everybody could do, let's work together. And so we offered to help And they did ask us to do that. And then the county funded bringing in a consultant and working with partners to identify a list of high priority projects. So, and that will include partner input, as you're familiar. And I'm really glad to hear that you are now engaged in that process. We've just selected the consultant, are contracting with them, haven't started the work yet, and the project will be completed by April. And so a little bit about that scope of work, some of the details of it. So a key first step is to define the wildfire risks to El Granada and affected communities. That includes overview of fire ecology, local fire history, and the fire environment with fuels characteristics, fuel models, weather, topography. It'll be, since you're moving forward with something like this more broadly for the region, it's going to be, as you mentioned before, it's going to be really important to make sure that we're in lockstep with that and that what we develop is supportive of your broader effort. And then assess the risks, the most likely scenarios, the ignition probability, fire behavior, potential fire spread, general identification of values at risk. Note that we're not talking about a quantification exercise here. We're not shifting into this is more important because this house is more valuable or what have you, but just like a more general understanding of those risks. And then identify and scope an array of potential actions with descriptions of those, some detail of conceptual project descriptions. This includes 3 partner meetings, and the partners include CAL FIRE, County Fire, Coastside Fire, San Mateo County, and the Midcoast Community Council. And those 3 meetings, those aren't necessarily the only meetings the RCD can have with the partners, but these are the meetings in the scope of work for the consultant to meet with the partner team at 3 key junctures. The first is to develop an understanding of the stakeholder concerns and information and ideas. So for example, the efforts that you have moving forward, which incidentally, we've also identified for them already, saying like this has to, at minimum, not work at cross purposes with these other efforts moving forward. And at maximum should support and advance and leverage those other efforts moving forward. So that's going to be really important information that you bring to these meetings. And then they will also meet with the partners to prevent their draft summary of their assessment and get feedback from you on that. Ground truth it. Does that resonate with you? Are they missing anything? Is this consistent with the work that you've been doing, et cetera, so that they can then iterate based on that feedback. And then to present the draft potential actions. So their draft report, get feedback from you before finalizing that and presenting it to the broader community. And then that final product will be presented at a public, and apparently a public meeting, because I forgot to put the G on here, but at a public meeting. And yeah, I think that's it. We just found out the other day that we had this opportunity to meet with you. So we kind of threw that presentation together really quickly. So it's not super polished, but that gives you a sense of what we're thinking, and very open to your feedback.
So Alex, thank you so much for that very comprehensive introduction to all of this. I have to say, I'm well aware of the RCD. I am one of your boots on the ground for First Flush. We go out in the big bad storms and wade into the creeks and stick our testing equipment in there and wade.
So great.
Yep. And also as program coordinator for Coastside CERT, we have set sustainability and coordination with local efforts as one of our priorities. And we're working with CERTs who are active in city government in the city of Half Moon Bay, who they're sustainability expert and others. So through that, we have, and my husband is a water quality person who has met with the RCD on several occasions. So we understand, we have a good idea of what you do in many of your areas. And thank you for the services that you provide.
Thank you. Thanks for being a First Flush volunteer. That's so great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's quite an exercise.
It is. And you too, anyone else who wants to crawl around in storm drains in the middle of the night when it's when it's really raining, she can guide you.
I'm happy to do it. Yeah, it's part of the glamour part of the job for sure.
Yeah.
So, but it's very useful. And I just hope that information goes someplace that helps us mitigate that downstream contamination that's going on. So, however, coming back to this study, again, what I'm sort of just amazed by is the overlapping nature of what the Coastside Fire Protection District, holding the contract for CAL FIRE, is already doing in this area. That our notes for how we're proceeding with our work in terms of enforcement cost recovery, working with other agencies, the ordinance that we just expanded, the environmental sustainability elements, the phasing plan, including limbing, chipping, everything else. I guess I'm still searching for, we are the last and most recent additive to this program. What is the, and Lynn Erickson from the MCC was the first person who reached out to engage, invite, shall we say, this consultant and whatever. What is the underlying purpose of this? If CAL FIRE came out one day and said, oh, here's the report that we've prepared for the whole area, including CAL FIRE, and the RCD comes out with a report that says, here's the El Granada report that we were asked to do, and they cover the same thing. How are we working together? And the other thing that concerns me is CAL FIRE is extreme. Most of the databases that your consultants will use, because it's most of the databases that every consultant in this field uses, are CAL FIRE's own database.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely.
It's all coming from CAL FIRE data. And one of the things that Chief Cox, I don't mean to speak for you, so jump right in, but this data changes every year, and especially these years where climate change and wildfire and drought, and all of this is, there's the Zone Haven database, which is your consultants are going to wind up referencing in this, but that's going to change next year. How does this report live? If you come up with certain conclusions for this year, which next year Zone Haven republishes its data, and what we should do changes, CAL FIRE is focused on having the agility to move in that new direction, informed by data. That's how we work. We also are responsive to the public. And these first 15 and second 57 properties that are being mitigated are science-based and in response to the public. So we are trying to be very aware of El Granada's issues, and our plan is focused on that. So this is my question. What is the underlying motivation for this study, and it's not being included until we raise a racket, and here we are. And I just want to know how this is going to be presented. Who's the real audience?
Yeah.
I can see all the good that could be done, and I'm a team player and I want to do it with you guys, but I just, there's something here that doesn't feel quite right.
Okay, so yeah, so there's a lot in there to unpack. So one is, so there were actually, I think there were a number of questions in there. One is, who's the audience? I think there's multiple audiences, but one thing is that there are people who want to do projects now, and there are people who don't want to do projects until all the analysis has been done, and so there's also a difficulty accessing funding if you haven't done some sort of prioritization, or it isn't empirically based what those projects are. So some of it is that for the sense of urgency that there is to advance projects now, to make sure that the ones that we're working on are the right ones right now. And so that's a big part of it. So I think that that audience is the people who can or should be doing projects or are wanting to advance them right now. There's just like tremendous pressure from the community to do something now, and making sure that the resources are going into the right ones.
So we're responding to that substantively. We're hearing it, we're doing it, it's happening.
Yeah, so some of the projects that might be identified here, so you're gonna have a project list that's coming out in the next few months?
It's already out. I mean, it's detailed in the data that is public information. That's
Well, I mean,
connected.
if it turns out that I think that's gonna be really important in this first meeting with the consultants, because if it turns out that this work is entirely done, then we don't need to do it.
Well, here's the caveat. We work on privately owned lands. So Corey Park, for example, Fitzgerald, those are outside of our jurisdiction. And that's where the county comes in, and Nick Calderon and all of his very good work. That's
Mhm,
where all that happens.
mhm.
So I
Well,
just-
that sounds like a piece that might be added, is the county parks piece. So I would say that if there's anything that you've already done, if what you've done is exactly what we're proposing, then we just don't need to do it. If it turns out that when you're giving this input to the consultants, that there's any critical gaps, then they can fill those gaps.
And again, I'm saying there will be gaps because of our area, our jurisdiction is, correct me here, Chief Cox, if I'm off in the wrong place, but you, as I understood this study outline, the point by point, what are we going to look at? It was everything in El Granada, which includes unincorporated areas, which we are a part of. It includes state parks, county parks, which we are not a part of. And it may include other jurisdictions as well.
National parks, yep. National parks, SFPUC land, it can include any of that. That's right.
There you go. So
Yep.
those
Yeah,
are-
so there's no need for us to replicate anything that's done. So anything that's already been done just doesn't need to be done again. That'll be part of that's why one of the most valuable pieces of this is them meeting with the partners initially and getting that lay of the land, knowing what already exists. Regarding the sort of what like iterating that set of questions or comments that you had around what about, as new information comes out or what have you. I think that that's the world that we work in generally. That's true with our water quality work. That's true with the erosion. That's true with ecosystem management. That's always the watershed plans. That's always the case, is that these need to be living documents, that conditions evolve, science evolves, information evolves, land ownership changes, policies change. And so, I mean, I consider that ubiquitous to our work, that we need to adapt to changing situations. I don't see this being an exception to that.
So if the report comes out and you have certain recommendations, and then next year when the new maps come out, those recommendations need to change.
Mhm.
How, is there something built in to allow the public understanding and support, or for the report to adapt itself, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's essential that it be framed that way in the report and in the public meetings and in the shaping of the effort. We actually already spoke with the consultants about that and said, look, we know that we're expecting this document to come out from CAL FIRE within like 18 months. How are you going to work that into this? How are you going to sort of manage that in this document? Because we know we can't wait 18 months to start, but we also know that there's something really important coming out during that time period. And so that's going to be something that we're hoping partners can help bring to the table. We talked with the consultants about also just finding out with CAL FIRE. So there's when the document comes out, right? But there's also what maybe is already known. So if there's some early thinking that they can incorporate into this, because we did talk with the consultants even before we got into contract with them about making sure that they don't work at cross purposes with any of these efforts that are underway currently, and making sure that they're very thoughtful about how to integrate that. That's the consultants' work. And then I think it's up to us to make sure that we're really managing community expectations around this.
Mm-hmm.
That as we, I think it's going to be really valuable to shift into a space of not just pure advocacy, but being nimble and science-based, and understanding that information might change and priorities might change. And that's certainly part of what I think is going to be essential messaging for us. And I'm hoping for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an area where I think we can partner.
Right. It's always ours.
Yeah.
So thank you for that comprehensive response. We are a peaceable board. We're a board that gets along well, that governs ourselves by civility and professionalism. It is something that we treasure, and it helps us get all of our work done, of course, and it makes us go home at night and feel good about our service. So you mentioned that there was acrimony in the whole Pescadero situation. I feel like we're just here doing our jobs, and I feel like there may be some acrimony that was the foundation for this report. And we are not interested in engaging in acrimony. We're interested in engaging in progress.
Yeah, same with us.
Yeah, right. So how do we do this in a way that we don't become a soapbox for individual, or I don't know, no acrimony? That's our policy. So how are we going to do this thing so that it goes peacefully and comes out well for every agency as well as for the public?
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of the culture of the RCD is similar to what you're describing, where the RCD board is very collegial. They're kind, they're volunteers. They're just stepping up in service in the same sort of thing, but they've leaned in to projects that have a lot of history to them. And like the acrimony in Pescadero is because of decades of, lawsuits and this and that with different opinions about what should be done down there. But, we listened and found a way through. And with this project that we're doing, I think part of it is that we weren't terribly interested in, we work where we're invited, but we weren't very interested in working on a project just because that was the squeakiest wheel. We wanted to work on a project because it would have the most benefit. Mm-hmm. And the only way that we could do that was by having some process that identified those projects, and have it not just be because who owns it, or who advocates the most, or because of one particular thread of history, but kind of bringing those things together and saying, okay, what makes the most sense here? Is it, to really put all the resources into Quarry Park? Is it some of the other work that we frankly don't do? Is it more about everybody's got a piece of this, and here's what they are, and this is the piece that we would help advance if we're invited to do so? Maybe there isn't a role for us moving forward, but this will help bring those things together. It's very often what I see with things like this and like watershed plans and other plans is that circumstances evolve before you even finish the document, or before you start. Or while you start doing one project and you had your sort of list of priorities, those priorities shift. Or there's somebody who brings in some new resources that you didn't expect and they're running with it. So, so be it. So, but I would hope and expect that the acrimony that I have seen in the community about this, which has largely been about community expressing frustration with the county, I would expect that acrimony doesn't exist in the partnership that's advancing this effort.
So good, because this would be an unfortunate thing, is if we go about Coast Side Fire Protection District with all of its resources that are science-based, and the board stands wholeheartedly behind the hard work and the science that are contributed to and performed every day by our exceptional staff. Captain Seeley, Chief Cox, Captain Sampson, I know he's not actually but involved. We are so lucky. We've got a dream team right now.
Yeah.
And so this team is working every day. They're doing a great job. We are supporting them with policy, with funding, expanding ordinances, providing resources, doing all the stuff a board's supposed to do, right? And then the report comes out and it's the RCD primarily working for the county, provides all of this great plan forward, and Coastside Fire, you need to do this, this, and this, which you're already doing.
No.
Outcome for us.
Just quick point of clarification. We're not working for the county on this.
Okay.
Not at all.
$1,000 comes from Measure K. I mean,
Yeah, the county funded it, but it's not working for the county at all. The county did provide funding, but it's not a document for the county, and the county is not leading it. The county doesn't have more say than you do in it. The county doesn't have a pass on recommendations or feedback. It is not for the county. It's for just for the purposes that are stated in that document. I just want to make that super duper clear. And so it's not like the county would have like more clout or say than you would, for example.
It's
Not
not
at all.
so much the cloud or the say, because I'm sure they're doing the job too. I don't have any acrimony towards or doubt about any of these agencies. Everybody's trying their best here.
Mhm.
It's going to be the public perception of this study when it's published and when it's presented to the public.
Mhm.
That, oh, X agency brought in the RCD and they hammered all these other agencies, and now they're doing their job and we've got a plan.
I hear
And
you. Got it.
that would be a very bad outcome for us.
Yep, I get that. Okay, I understand.
Of the work that our group is
Absolutely.
doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So let's be thoughtful about that as we, that's really important input, and I hear what you're saying. And so let's make sure that the way the report is written, the way it's presented, the way even maybe what logos are on the cover or who it says it's by or what have you, let's make sure that it's something that doesn't appear that way. And let's make sure that we're not part of anything that undermines community confidence in the work that you're already doing.
If at the end of the day, we have a report from the RCD who is positioned as the interlocutor, as the facilitator between all of these multiple agencies, and this is the good work that everyone is doing, and this is a way forward, and you're identifying projects and responsibilities and whatever created by these agencies and agreed to. And really, essentially, what we're doing is we are publicizing what each agency is doing. If your consultants find gaps, let's talk about those honestly and fairly. But it just can't be a PR vehicle,
Right.
to create praise and blame.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Completely agreed.
The
Absolutely.
community.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I really appreciate the way that you're articulating it too. So I could not agree more. And let's, as you're working with the consultants, let's get down to specifics about like what the actual steps are to make sure that it's neither a praise nor blame vehicle. And yeah, all of your input on that will be really valuable and we will honor it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cynthia, I'd really like to have some time. We're going to have our kickoff meeting. That's going to be right after the holidays. I'll send out the date for that meeting as soon as everything is scheduled. But I think it'd be great if we can connect before then as well. And I can really just hear you out and we can just have a longer conversation about things and plan things out. Yeah, because you are right that we would be introducing you into the partnership a little bit later than the other partners. And I just want to make sure that you're up to speed and everything is like, we're getting all the information that we have gathered maybe from some other partners and that everything is on the table.
Thank you
This is
so
all
much.
part of the plan.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Although we did have Captain Seeley involved going back to June, I think it
And
was.
I saw that, and you
yeah,
got the
just-
best. You're right on the right person to, because he knows, he's an encyclopedic knowledge of what's the reality of all of these various sites, what's the history behind them, what is going on with their ownership, what's the level of mitigation that needs to be done. He's got them lined up, he's got them prioritized. We are grateful for all of that work. But there is one thing I have to clarify. I am just one person on a 5-person board. And Steve and I are the two people who are the vegetation committee. So Coastside Fire Protection District, no one person, no one board member speaks for the board. It has to be, and the vegetation committee, it's got to be the two of us. It's got to be Steve, as well as me if I'm invited, but Steve is the senior member on this committee. And your RFP states that there's only going to be one person from each agency. Now I get it. You can't have so many voices that the meetings never can get scheduled and that people just, but how will Steve and I, if you call on one of us to represent the Vegetation Committee today, the other one of us will just have to listen carefully, but it's uncomfortable for us to be split. We are the Vegetation Committee.
Mhm. I think that is something that's a real challenge for us, because each partner is asking about bringing in more. It has,
Yeah.
this is, and then with the Mid-Coast Community Council, then there's the people, there's additional people in the community who feel really strongly that that would be really difficult for us. That's just a really slippery slope to double or triple the advisory group. Is there some way that you guys can just really coordinate closely around this?
We always coordinate closely.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think we can do that. I think what we're saying is we both want to be present and be a part of this process. We'll make sure that it doesn't interfere with the way that we communicate between ourselves. I think you've seen it right here. We're not both speaking at the same time. We're not both giving you the same views. We're respectful of each other and our message and the purpose of our message. So I think what you're seeing today will be a reflection of how we behave within the process as it relates to not interfering with the process or causing more confusion. So I hope just the actions of this meeting reflect that. So with that, I think we're both just saying that we feel strongly to both be involved in the process as it relates to representing the board as well as the district.
And Sheena, when we meet, Steve will meet with us if that's.
Absolutely. Sure. We can do that. Yeah. So when we meet, I would really like to have an opportunity to speak with you before that we have that kickoff meeting. In the kickoff meeting, we were planning to have just one representative. Again, it's because there are so many partners and we just want to make sure folks have a voice. But another part of the process is that the consultant will be speaking with each partner individually to gather some more information, ask questions, collect data. And so for those meetings, that the consultant can meet with both of you or the whole board, that would be appropriate, right? If you'd like to do that. But at these kickoff partner meetings, having one person representative would probably be best, just because that is how we're doing it with all the other partners. We can have further discussions about it, but that is how we have designed that partner meetings.
And those partner meetings, that's an important distinction I hadn't thought to make. Those partner meetings aren't the totality of conversations that the consultant's going to have. So the consultant is going to want to turn to experts like your group. And people with, local knowledge about programs and efforts and fire behavior and all that kind of stuff, which is, there's a lot more that Coastside Fire Protection District can offer this process than those partner meetings.
Are the partner meetings public meetings that are recorded?
No.
Okay. All right.
I'm still thinking about, your comments before, Cynthia, which were kind of about like making sure, I mean, this, I'm gonna restate this differently, but it's through my lens here, making sure that the RCD approaches this with all humility so that we don't look like we just come riding in on our white horse and staple together some things that people are already doing, and then come out of it looking like we've solved these problems. And I think that's really important. I understand how important it is not to compromise essentially your brand. Like it's so important that you be seen in the essential role that you provide to the community, because that's how you're going to get your work done in the future, is with them seeing you in that space. And I'd be really interested in exploring more what this process might look like, not just the document, but the process might look like. There might be things like, where we're talking about hosting the public meeting or something like that. Maybe there's something we can do so that you're convening that meeting and we're providing the support. But it's if you want to, we can see as it unfolds if it's something that you want to be associated with. But maybe there's some way that we can do it so that Coastside Fire Protection District is actually hosting or holding or convening that meeting, and then we can provide some of the logistical support to it. But I'm very interested in keeping the conversation going about that piece in particular. I won't be down in the weeds on the technical stuff, but I want to make sure that we're not swimming in your lane in any way that's going to compromise your ability to lead in the space that you're leading in. So if we could talk more about that.
I so appreciate you saying that, and that's very
Yeah,
gracious
thank
of you. Actually, we're the fire department.
Yeah.
You know, this is a wildfire study for El Granada, and Steve lives there, and 2 other of our 5 board members live right around there.
That's
So
right.
this is just as personal as I can get, so that one-on-one thing, which is so much a part of why the Half Moon Bay region is a unique and wonderful region, is that we are all working together, and we're working together as neighbors as well as people who, you know, professionally do our jobs here.
That's right.
So that's what I want to support too. It is the health and community building part of this that could be great, or if it's allowed to be torn apart into credit and the acrimony and all that, just time wasting stuff. It will prevent us from really taking full advantage of the use of these public funds.
That's right. That's right. We can be very nimble in the way that we work. Let's continue to talk about that. It is our desire to be of support to you and to the community. It is not our desire to swim in your lane or to be a fire district. It's not appropriate for us. It's not what we want to do. And so we're responding and working where we're invited, but we want to do that in a way that adds value, that doesn't detract from anyone else who's doing essential work in this space.
I personally appreciate that. I appreciate the frankness and the directness of the way we're communicating here. Being mindful of time, I would like to give a last opportunity for staff to have input. You know, mostly we've been talking as directors, but this really comes down to how staff's going to respond to this report, be involved in this report, the involvement they've had up to this point, and how it shaped this, the complexities of our community, which Kelly X, I appreciate you being direct about how this all came together, and the players, especially Mid-Coast Council, what their involvement was, and again, the shared concern that we all have. But you know, staff has been excellent to the board, informing us over the last 5 years of where we're at, what work they're doing in El Granada, what conversations they're having with the county parks. They keep us informed so that we're making the best decisions within our policy, and the support, especially financial, to the district on the decisions we make that impact these decisions. And with that, I'd like just a final opportunity for staff to have any input on their concerns and their questions to this process. And with that, I'll turn it to you, Chief Cox.
Yeah, thanks, Director Stockman. And I thank you for just the great conversation between both agencies. It's been really healthy to watch it. The thing I would say from my perspective that I think we should really be explicit about, and it gets confused all the time, is CAL FIRE is the wildland fire agency for the state responsibility areas of California. As I'm speaking to you right now, I wear Coastside Fire Protection District hat under contract to the district, right? Austin speaks to you with San Mateo County Fire Department patches on as an employee under contract to the county. So there's always that nuance with us that's very confusing, that although we wear the CAL FIRE patch, we're under contract to somebody to provide their fire protection. And so just because CAL FIRE's in the car doesn't mean CAL FIRE's in the car, as the best way to put it.
Got it.
We report to the Board of Supervisors for County Fire, and we report to the Board of Directors for Coastside Fire Protection District. My final thought on this is really coming back to that managing expectations in the community. And there's no doubt that more vegetation management and more building codes and changes in land use need to happen to address this wildfire problem moving forward. But let's not give the false expectation that if a fire breaks out on a hot, windy day, it is going to do destruction to El Granada. And we are not going to be able to mitigate our way out of that in 5 years or 10 years. It is a long-term process that people must know that they're in danger in that area under those conditions. And I feel as though, you know, it doesn't take a lot of science to look at fuel, vegetation, and weather under a hot, windy condition to know that if a fire gets started that's pushing in towards El Granada, we're going to see fire spotting ahead of itself a half mile, 2 miles, or in the case of the CZU complex, potentially 8 miles. And at that point, the nuanced models, how valuable are they? So I think it's just a matter of setting the expectations that what we're trying to do is take action that actually has an impact 95% of the time under normal conditions. But this is not going to solve the 5% of the time that those fires break out under unfavorable conditions and have catastrophic consequences. And that is something I think we have to message over and over again to the community is this project is not going to get us out of the problem. This project is a step in dealing with the 95% of the fires that occur. The 5% that have the likelihood to occur won't adhere to any of these kind of models. And that's my concern. It's just not over delivering or over.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. Yep. We've been having those same conversations.
Yep.
Also, I think another expectation is about whether people, I think some people are motivated by wanting to get their insurance back and thinking if there's some vegetation management, it'll change their insurance. And I think that ship has probably sailed. I think that's going to be another expectation. Like, I think it's an unstated goal that some community members have that we're going to need to vet a little bit.
Great. Thanks, Director Stockman. That's all I have.
Okay, again, thank you both to Shana and Kelly X for bringing us up to speed and trying to answer some of our questions. It's very much appreciated. We both look forward, or all of us look forward with continuing, you know, in this process, and we'll voice our concerns that come up. We expect the same from you and welcome that. And we'll figure out a way that we work best within this process. So without anything further, I'll adjourn this meeting.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.